Hey everyone, I'm Leandra and this is the Lexington facility. And today for the meet and greet, which we're doing every day at noon, I've brought you a sneak peek of a horse that we're really excited about, whose name is YAMAZAKI. So YAMAZAKI, as we call Zach around the barn, which is a little bit less of a mouthful, is a really interesting horse for a couple reasons. And he actually agrees, so this is perfect. He's a bit of a character, as you can tell, and his dad is quite a famous sire. He stands at Darley. It's Medaglia d'Oro, one of the most infamously mispronounced sires that I can think of, at least. And that makes him a half-brother to Rachel Alexandra, who many of you may know as a really well-accomplished mare in the racing world. Well, we hear about a lot of the guys a lot, but Rachel Alexandra was a really standout mare. So, just like his dad, he's very correct in conformation and will probably even out to be around the same height at 16.2. Right now, he's just over 16.1, so with time, and again, he's a 2017 gelding, so he'll still have time to grow and fill out, and he'll, I'm sure, be a big beefcake. And he could go in many different directions from what we've seen already. So he had a stress fracture to his left front shin. Right here, you can tell, you can barely see it. There's a little bump, which is really common because they place a screw in it. So imagine like if you had a screw in your shin, you'd have a little bit of a bump around it because there's some calcification, but the bone itself stays really strong, and he hasn't had any issues with it. He actually raced after he had that put in. It was put in last May, and his last race was in January of this year. So he's doing just fine on it because there are very few things that can stress an area as much as the intensity of racing. So if they race on it, chances are they're gonna be fine for whatever you wanna do. So Julie here, who's riding for us today, is gonna walk him around and we'll show you him moving. Right before he came to us, just a little over a month ago, he had a stone bruise. So you might see, this is a soft ring. We're really fortunate to have this lovely arena with footing provided by Martin Collins. And so this is a little bit softer, and we've tried to keep it a little bit cushy because that's actually a really fun noise, if you can hear it, that our arena will make in the wind. And so we kind of use it as a litmus test for shocking sounds that might come up. So you saw Zach got a little bit startled by it, but settled back down really quickly. And they are, after all, instinctively flight creatures. So that's very forgivable. There are very few times where you're just going to have an explosive noise coming from next to them. So it's a little bit of a stress test for them, but looks like he passed with flying colors. And while we're going, if you guys have any questions about him, feel free to type it into the comment section and we'll try to get to them as they're coming up. Allie, who's filming, will be able to read any questions that come up and ask them. But even after we're done filming, feel free to type those questions into the comment section and we'll try to get to them as we can. The ring's a little bit scary today. We actually warmed him up outside, and the wind is much more sort of naturally flowing, obviously, in an outdoor ring, and he was totally unfazed by it, but this is definitely next level testing them. Whenever you're ready, Julie, and you think he's settled, let's bring him up to the trot for a little bit. So again, he had a stone bruise that he's just still healing from, and we've put something that's really good to address little things like that, one being magic cushion, which is something that you can put on their foot directly, and that helps to give them some alleviation from any sort of soreness, but also riding in a soft footing like this. Now, YAMAZAKI hasn't gone up on the website yet. Like I said before, this is sort of a sneak peek, so he's not quite yet up to what we would call our standard for putting them online. And you can tell he's a little bit excitable anyway because he had a little bit of extra not stall rest because he was still going to turn out, but just rest and recovery time since he had that bruise on his foot. So he's a little excited to be out. And he does have those champion bloodlines, so, you know, being a good athlete means also having plenty of energy, and he's actually channeling it really well. Like, he will throw his head around, but he's not moving his feet out of place. He's trying to be a really good boy, even though he's just pumped full of enthusiasm and really excited about what he's doing. And something that we noticed when we had first started working with Yamazaki, before we started to give him a little bit of extra time for that foot injury, and then again, for those of you jumping on, it was just a stone bruise. Nothing that will leave him with residual effect of that, just a temporary thing. But we had started to work with him a little bit, and he became such a good, quick learner and solid citizen in the barn. We were about to take the video for his profile. We already have pictures of him and everything when we decided to give him a little extra time. But he shows a lot of prospect in a lot of different directions. He has a nice upwards movement and covers a lot of ground with his feet. He does play a little bit with his bit in his head, and you can see some of that head movement right now is just because he's excited. He's trying to be a good boy, but he can be a little bit fussy, and so as he's working, he can sometimes pull down through his mouth, which goes through the reins, and the rider can feel it as sort of having a heavy movement. And he's not naturally a heavy horse, but one of the things that you can do to combat that sort of pull is to sit up and hold your hand and use your leg to actually push them forward up into your hand. You don't want to get into an argument with them in their mouth. You should never discipline through their mouth. Doesn't turn out well generally. And the best thing you can do is kind of set them up for success and make it really, really clear what you're asking for, because a lot of the confusion and breakdown with training comes from when there is just miscommunication, which I would say is probably true of most relationships in general, even the human-to-human ones. Miscommunication definitely doesn't help anything. So when you're working with, especially a young horse, you should think about making what you're asking super clear. Kind of like if you were talking to a toddler and they're trying to understand what you're saying and they're just not getting it. Like, you wouldn't ask them different ways if you're trying to teach them something. You have to be consistent and patient and just repetitive, and definitely give them lots of praise when they're doing something right. Try to just be effective through clarity. Perfect. Julie, I'll have you come in for a second. I'll put you on this spot and see what you think about Yamazaki and things that could be helpful for anybody thinking about a horse who's kind of similar and maybe is a little bit mouthy like that, or just things very specifically about him.
I think a lot of the time when he fusses with his head, it's because he's trying to go backwards instead of forwards. So you just have to let him go with your hand and push him forward through it, and then he's fine.
And then when you say he's trying to go backwards instead of forwards, maybe elaborate a little bit for people who might not understand what you're talking about. Is he trying to go physically backwards, like back up?
He just doesn't want to do what you're asking of him.
Right.
So when you ask them to go forward and they toss their head, that's a backwards reaction. So then you just squeeze and don't pull on their mouth and let them work through it.
Yeah, perfect.
We have a question for you, Leandra.
Sure.
How tall is he, and will his prior stress fracture in his shin be a limiting factor in a future career?
Yeah. We're just around 16'1" right now. Sorry, Rambo is being really distracting right now. I don't know how to actually get the camera to point down. We'll see if we can. Oh, there he is. Really dramatic here. Sorry, back to your question. He's constantly distracting us. He currently stands around 16'1". His dad was 16'2" and a really big build, Medaglia d'Oro. He's definitely, look him up if you don't know who he is. The spelling might be a little bit difficult, but he was a really beautiful, elegant horse, very correct in his conformation, and definitely Yamazaki seems like he's going to be very much the same type. Regarding his old injury, fortunately, it's not in an articular area. So if you think about a joint being like a really close fit, like ball and socket, any sort of ball and socket joint, when you have changes to that, then it's going to affect the articulation and how you move. But his injury was in his shin. What would be the shin for a person? So this metacarpus area, it's right there. Zach, you going to point to it? And you can see it's barely visible, but there is a screw in there. So that's why when the bone tries to repair the area and has some calcification around the screw, that's why there's a little bit of a profile to it. But He's not reactive to it. It feels not squishy, but kind of fibrous. You can tell it's just, the body is really good at repairing itself, especially when they're young. And like I had mentioned, he actually raced on this after. And there are very few things you can do that stress the body like racing because of just how high intensity it is. So I do not expect that he'll have any limitations for other career paths, because if he can stand up to that, then there's, like I said, there's not many other things that are that high intensity. You know, things like jumping where you're putting stress on the joints, that's not a joint. So you don't have to worry about it as much. And he's still really young, he's super resilient. It doesn't bother him. We haven't had any soundness issues with that at all. And we actually, because he came with the stone bruise, we had our vet isolate his, when we noticed a little bit of a gait irregularity. So not like a true lameness, because he wasn't really like, ouch, lame on it. But we noticed he was just a little bit short in his step. And so I wanted to make absolute sure that it had nothing to do with that injury, to just ease any sort of concern there would be about it. So our vet actually was able to isolate that irregularity to his foot and just his foot. So once they do sort of a temporary, think of it like lidocaine. If you were going to get a dental procedure, they temporarily numb the area, and then you don't feel it. So they will temporarily numb, starting with the lowest points and work their way up when they're finding a lameness. And so just at that very, very bottom block here, when they were able to temporarily numb that area in the lameness exam, then he was totally sound with no defect to his gait. So we can confirm that there is nothing wrong with that that has anything to do with that previous injury, and I don't expect it to affect him in the long run. He's really itchy on his head. I'm his itching post right now. And then what do you think for personality-wise, Julie?
He's a big goofball.
Big goofball.
He definitely likes
You?
attention.
I know.
Whenever you go in his stall, he comes right up to you, and like, he's not very mouthy, but he just like wants to be in your pocket.
Yeah. And then we have him in turnout. For anybody who's concerned about sort of injury stuff, he goes out on turnout every day. He likes to be sort of a group who will play with him, but he's not really aggressive. He doesn't go after other horses, and he doesn't get picked on. He's more of kind of a mid-pack guy, but he is also a good leader type too. He'll go out with his friends and like to be the one sort of romp around, but he's not really assertive like a true alpha. So anything else? Do we have any questions? He really wants to get this attention right now. Oh, that's all you wanted?
Yes.
Thank you. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you're watching live, and even if you're watching us after the fact, make sure you join us every day except for Sunday at noon. We will feature a horse here in our meet and greets to try to accommodate everyone, since we're not able to host you all here to see our horses in person. And again, this is Yamazaki. He's a 2017 gelding. He's not yet on our website, but he will be soon, so keep your eye out for him. We're pretty excited about him. So yeah, our website is horseadoption.com. You can see all the horses who are currently available for adoption, and this guy will be up there soon, but make sure you tune in again tomorrow at noon and you'll see another adoptable horse. Thanks.